President Obama's energy policy, his claims that contradict the actual facts. Why does Jane or Joe Public, when appearing before Congress, have to take an oath of honesty, but members of Congress or the President, when appearing before the public, don't have to take that same oath of honesty? Why does the federal government require truth in advertising, but political advertisements don't have to be truthful at all? I, Mark Galvin, swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God. This election is about trust. President Obama has said, if you want to be the president, you owe the American people the truth. On the campaign trail this year, he has also said, you can trust me. Most of my life, I've been a member of the uninformed masses. Too busy working too many hours in the oil patch, West Texas water floods, Gulf Coast offshore, Prudhoe Bay, Alaska, the largest oil field in North America. When I wasn't working, I was playing or watching sports. But that all changed as a result of the energy crisis of 2008, when I heard many Democrats grossly distort the facts, or else tell flat-out lies about the energy crisis. Now with the energy crisis of 2012, the gross distortion of facts are coming out again. In 2008, as a result of the Republicans' drill baby drill concept, Senator Obama, Senate Majority Leader Reid, and then House Speaker Pelosi all claimed, even if we begin drilling now, it would take 10 years to see any impact. Yet during the energy crisis earlier this year, President Obama alluded to the increase in domestic crude oil production as if he had something to do with it. Sorry, Mr. President, but your production doesn't come online until 2019, according to your comments in 2008. Our domestic crude oil production is up, but that increase came from state and private leases, predominantly in Texas and North Dakota, not from federal leases. Production from federal offshore leases, PAD 5, California and Alaska, is almost non-existent. Production from federal offshore leases, PAD 3, Texas and Louisiana, is lower than it was when President Obama took office. During the energy crisis earlier this year, President Obama proclaimed, "We're drilling everywhere, and we're drilling everywhere we can." Actually, Mr. President, no and no. We're not drilling in the eastern Gulf of Mexico. We're not drilling off the East Coast. We're not drilling on hundreds of millions of acres of federal lands onshore. Mr. President, when I was a young boy, my mom taught me the difference between can and may. Can is the physical ability to do something. May is the permission to do something. Oil companies have been drilling in the western half of the Gulf of Mexico for decades and have been drilling onshore for the better part of a century. As such, oil companies can drill in the eastern half of the Gulf of Mexico, off the east coast, in more areas off the west coast, and in hundreds of millions of acres of federal lands onshore, but they may not. During the energy crisis of 2008, President Bush lifted the presidential moratorium on the eastern half of the Gulf of Mexico, the east coast, etc. But in 2010, President Obama reinstated the drilling moratorium on these areas. So, President Obama, why do you mislead the American people with your claims that we're drilling everywhere we can? Someone once said, if you want to be president, you owe the American people the truth. Mr. President, how are we supposed to trust you when you're not being honest with us? According to the Department of Energy, we're importing 9 million barrels of oil per day. At $90 per barrel, that's $810 million per day we're paying for our oil imports. At 365 days per year, that's $296 billion per year we're sending to other countries to stimulate their economy, create jobs, and pay taxes. Talk about outsourcing. Just opening up most or all areas for oil and gas, natural gas exploration would stimulate our economy. But for every additional 1 million barrels of oil per day we produce domestically, that's 32.8 billion per year we're keeping in our country, stimulating our economy, creating jobs, and paying taxes. There's a fourth reason we should be drilling everywhere: national security. We get most of our oil imports from Canada and Mexico. However, because we're tied to the global market, any cuts in production by oil exporting countries, unless offset by increases elsewhere, will drive all oil prices higher. Small cuts in production could drive prices up a little. Big cuts in production could drive prices up significantly. An oil exporting country could commit an act of economic terrorism by just cutting its oil exports significantly and devastate our economy without firing a shot. Based on these 4 reasons, someone should ask President Obama why we're not drilling everywhere we can. President Obama, if you want to be the president, you owe the American people the truth. I don't know much about clean coal technology, but I do know President Obama claimed he supported it in both the 2008 and the 2012 campaigns. But I also know Senator Obama told environmentalists at a fundraiser in 2008 they're welcome to build them, clean coal-fired power plants, but I'll make sure they go bankrupt. The way Senator Obama is going to ensure they go bankrupt was through his proposed cap-and-trade legislation. Fortunately, even a Democratic-controlled Congress wouldn't pass President Obama's cap-and-trade legislation. But what President Obama didn't get through legislation, he got through regulation, through his EPA. President Obama's EPA has closed coal mines in West Virginia and is allegedly set to close some 200 coal-fired power plants in 25 states after the election. All I know is I'm glad I don't work in the coal mining industry. Which Obama will show up after the election with all the flexibility? The one that favors clean coal or the one that makes sure they go bankrupt?